Welcome to the Avance podcast. I'm Dan. Nick is over there dying.
I'm still alive. Slowly. It's going to sound like I've had it forever considering you're going to hear all these episodes, but it's only been a couple of days because we had to record all this together. But Dan, I have a question for you, and I think this is going to go with the tip of the week, but we're overheating. And so
yes.
Our cars have to be overheating, right? That's a thing.
Yeah, kind of. So,
okay.
As you can tell, I'm not at home. I'm in the office in our very nice backgrounds here. So, yeah, we are. It's about 96 degrees out right now. I actually got a message from somebody the other day who had done a bunch of off-roading. They've been off-roading with us many times. So I said, this is a perfect excuse for our Carter Automotive Group tip of the week. And they said, why am I overheating? Do you have any ideas? And they popped their hood, and it looks like they just dipped the inside of the engine bay in mud. It's filthy, and it's filthy in the extent of it's just the normal result of doing a Avance off-road day at Dirtfish. And one of the things we recommend, of course, is that you need to clean your engine bay. What had happened is their radiator, AC condenser, everything under the hood was covered in mud. So nothing was flowing through that radiator, nothing was broken, but everything had just stuck. And this is not just for your car. Your AC condensers outside your house. If you're looking for why is my AC working that well? Chances are all this stuff is clogged. So if you're wondering, is it safe to wash under the hood of your car? Yes, and now is a really good time to do that if your AC isn't blowing that cold or for some reason your car just seems to be getting that hot. Guess what, Washingtonians, 96 degrees is actually not that hot of an operating range for the average vehicle. Our friends down in Texas, California, Arizona, they're saying 115, literally saying 115-ish right now. It is hot as hell in the south, but you know what? Your car's fine as long as your cooling system is in good condition. So best way to clean your radiator, everybody thinks just spray it off. No, spray it from the back. You want to do it from the inside out. Push all that dirt away. Don't make it go through your radiator fins. Don't get it all shoved up in there. Take that pressure washer, take it back with the car off, not with the fan spinning behind it, but take it through and pressure wash from the backside first, and you're going to unlodge about 80% of that dirt just doing it that way. And that's how you get the inside of that radiator clean. Then you can power wash the rest of the motor. Obviously, you want to cover the electrical components. Just a cheap plastic bag works pretty well. That stuff is actually designed to get wet. It's not designed to be pressure washed 5 inches away. But if you get a good 18 inches back with a wide spray pressure washer, you're actually going to need less pressure than you think. That'll get most of it. And then if you do what I did, you just go to Park Place and say, hey, clean my engine bay. Because I'm going to be honest, that's what I did with my truck, and I don't regret it for 1 second because my engine bay looks great and I didn't have to do any of it. I have done it the hard way many, many times in the Land Cruiser and cars I don't care about. When it comes to the Raptor and my life now, I just just do it. I don't want to do it.
Well, and I was going to add on to your list of your car and your house. Your portable air conditioners have filters in them too, and they definitely need to be cleaned. And you would not believe the amount of dirt that's sucked into them. I just cleaned mine today because I was wondering why my air conditioner wasn't working. So, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And
a great way to keep maintenance up on that. I know it's a simple thing, but hey, it's the age we live in now. It's an electronic age. Roombas are fantastic. I love Roombas. Nobody from Roomba is paying me, but they are a great way to keep the dust down in your house. And if you're like us, you have fans on all the time because you like the noise or just the white noise kind of thing. They are fantastic for that. So if you have a Roomba and you've been on the fence about one, there's actually a great excuse to get one. You may say my house isn't that dirty. I don't need something that vacuums for me all the time, but it keeps the dust down. You'd be surprised how much dust they get rid of. So just saying that actually does help a lot. So anyway,
absolutely.
That's our tip of the week. Nick, you need to rest, buddy.
I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna wish everybody out there. I hope they stay safe. We got a great guest coming on today. Dan's got a lot of good questions, but I'm gonna go bow out and go back to sleep because that's what I've been doing, and I'm almost through it. So I'm on the other side. So I will see everybody on the other side. Dan, have a wonderful vacation.
Thanks, man. Get your rest. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, stay healthy.
Bye.
Yeah. Our guest this week came to us as a suggestion from Avance. I reached out to the Avance Hive Mind and I said, you know what? I have a million questions about EVs. I need somebody who is more than just a salesman in the industry, but somebody who actually really gets their hands dirty on these things, knows how the power industry works, knows how batteries work in EVs. I wanted to kind of do a deep dive on these. We have a lot of, there's a lot of hearsay in the media. There's a lot of back and forth on, are these really good for the environment? If everybody's telling you to turn off their AC, how are you going to charge your electric cars? Look at these massive lines at Tesla in California. And I'm like, that's just a little snippet. That doesn't tell the whole story. So I reached out and they said, you got to get a hold of Chad down at ReCell EV. He's an Avance member. He knows cars and he will talk to you. And sure enough, Chad, welcome to the show. I'm going to push your last name though. Can you tell me your full name?
It's Maglaque. I'll stop you right
Maglaque.
there.
Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Just like Albuquerque.
Perfect. All right, Chad, you are the owner, founder of ReCell EV, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So ReCell's based down in we're actually right between Austin and San Antonio. The two cities are so close. So we're right down
where you can't buy a Tesla.
What's that?
Where you can't buy a Tesla.
In fact, actually, I mean, that's intentional and strategic. And we'll get into this later maybe. But last year when we first moved down here. So I'm originally from Seattle. Actually originally from Vancouver, but lived in Seattle up until actually last summer. And then we moved down. My wife's originally from the San Antonio area.
Washington or BC? Vancouver, Washington or BC?
No, it's always BC.
There you go. I know a particular listener, Matt, is going to be very happy you said that. Shout out to you.
In fact, when I say about, you'll get it. But actually, ReCell is the work of several years of working this space. Actually going right back to probably around 2008, 2009. After Tesla developed their first Roadster, they were also developing battery packs for actually Mercedes at the time. They had their Smart 4.2 and a couple other products as well. And Toyota was doing some work with their RAV4 and stuff. So we've actually been working with Tesla power packs or batteries for almost a solid 10 years now. And ReCell came about simply because these Model S's in particular are just coming off warranty. They're all at the kind of 8-9 year mark. And of course, there's, and we'll get into this as well, there's zero infrastructure around on the service side for electric vehicles, at large, but certainly Teslas, in particular the Model S's, and everyone's seen that, the apocryphal, if we will, that YouTube video of the guy blowing up his, Tesla the moment he gets his kind of $20,000 invoice. But there's some backstory to that as well. But genuinely, we'll get into this too, is that we have customers coming in and they're facing an invoice of anywhere from $13,000 to $18,000. And we just turned around and said, there's got to be a better solution for that. So we started working on some Model S's, actually kind of our first, proof of concept was actually up in Seattle, working with some fellow Avance folks. Kind of took some of the work and knowledge I've been working with on the battery packs. Can we actually make this work on a Model S? So that was the kind of the first thing. And then actually coming down to Texas, San Antonio, Austin, it's kind of our phase 2 proof of concept. And we're farther along with just kind of proof of concept, but truly kind of, okay, great, you can do it, but can you make money at it? Because that's obviously a big delta. And what we've proven, we launched the operation here in December, and we had some fairly modest goals in terms of what we're going to do for the year. Because it's not just a matter of just kind of if you build it, they'll come. And so we actually we've doubled our goal for the year within 6 months, and we're getting plenty of demand. There's no lack of demand for kind of going out and solving this issue. So what we provide is actually remanufactured battery packs. So we'll take in a battery pack from customers, or we may be able to kind of source them through auction and some other places. And, we go through, we refurbish that, we certify it, get it all up to spec, make sure everything's, absolutely factory spec and all those pieces. And then what's kind of cool is because we can actually develop an inventory of these packs, we can actually provide virtually kind of a just-in-time delivery for a customer. So they can actually bring their Model S in or ship it to us in most cases. And, we can kind of turn that around within, as little as kind of 2 days. Other times it's maybe a bit longer in terms of a week, because and we'll get into some of these issues, is that, it's actually, the cells are perfectly fine. It may actually just be a simple hardware, firmware, or board issue where there's actually been a failure on one of the boards. Mm-hmm. And for the battery management system on these things, these boards are the single source of truth for what's actually going on. So no matter if the batteries were operating perfectly fine, if it's not reporting the right data, it immediately shuts down. And you need to kind of think of not just the Tesla BMS, but these BMSs are kind of like Gordon Ramsay, right? Like if there's anything out of spec, it's shut it down. And rightly so, right? For safety reasons.
Safety, yeah.
right? So if there's anything out of temperature variance and stuff like that, and it's insane in terms of the amount of data that Tesla collects, out of some basic fundamentals of resistance, current, your standard Ohm's law stuff, and temperature. The synthetic parameters that they're able to develop and actually kind of devise what's going on actually within the actual battery cell and the chemistry is pretty incredible. And so as a result, they can detect months in advance whether there's a weak short developing, all sorts of things that are going on. In fact, it's pages of data that actually come off these battery management systems. It's pretty insane. Anyway, yeah. So we go out and we're able to refurbish these batteries, get them certified, get them back up to spec, and then our goal is to at least keep these batteries in operation for 10 or more years. Right? They come off warranty at 8. We'll at least get you another 2, hopefully more. In a lot of these cases, we're seeing batteries that are perfectly good, or that we can deliver right through to 150,000 miles or more. In fact, we had one 2-3 weeks ago that was 9-year-old battery. Out of the factory, the Model S was 265 mile range, and this thing had 251 miles, so well north of, I think that's like 95. Almost 95% if I'm doing the math right. So
yeah.
Pretty incredible. But not all these packs end up that way. And so that's, and we live in a world where we're seeing pack failures, right? But there's a lot of Teslas out there that aren't experiencing those kinds of issues.
So I had a couple questions around that.
Good roundout in terms of what we're doing.
Yeah, you made me think of a lot of questions as you were talking through that. So
sure.
That blocks one misconception I hear right away, that people are, I wouldn't say strangely under the impression of you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people think that when a battery pack, or they say is defective, that it's just like tossed. And that's really not the case with lithium batteries in general. You can recycle even small lithium batteries, but these big, massive packs, you can fix.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, in fact, some of those early Smart 4.2 packs that we were, working with, came out in 2008, 2009, and they're still running, even today in some cases. But the kind of the best way to kind of think of it, in my sister-in-law uses this example, is that, think of it like a string of Christmas lights, right? You got 96 cells or 96 lights out there. One of them goes off and the whole thing kind of comes down. But that doesn't mean you throw out, sometimes we do throw out the whole Christmas light string, right? But, with a little bit of intelligence, and actually, like I said, these battery management systems will report cell level data for you. You can actually know before you go into the pack exactly what you're going after. And we developed a work plan. We know exactly which cell is out, what needs to be done. And yeah, there's no need to, if we think about it, there's all sorts of embodied energy, capital into these packs. They're expensive, right? For most people, these are a home equity loan. And because one out of the 96 bricks is gone, doesn't mean you toss out, they come in modules. There's 16 modules in the pack. And absolutely, there's no reason to toss out the other 16. And then they would never get tossed into a landfill. But you as the owner are sitting there going guess what? I've got at least, 15, 16 out of $20,000 in this pack. I'd really like to not lose that. So what we turn around is what we can do is we can, either, fix, replace, or do whatever we need to do in terms of the individual packs. And like I said, a lot of times it's actual board issues, so we actually don't have to do anything to the actual cells themselves. And there's a lot you can also do, and there's a lot of precision around this in terms of module matching, and again using that. There's no secret here. Tesla's out there remanufacturing these batteries at scale. And if you're doing it at scale, which is what we're driving towards, you can actually go out and do that. But yeah, so don't toss the whole pack out. Come to, if you go to Tesla, great, right? If you want to come to us, you can talk to that as well, and we can actually get you back on the road. That's exactly what, and that's literally our mission, right? Our mission is to get their cars back on the road.
Yeah, I think there's a big concern or a big misconception that EVs just turn into bricks when they're done. And the market you look at resale costs of EVs when if like a battery pack is bad, it's through the floor because you think, like you said, you look at Tesla, and if you're looking at up to 18 grand for a battery pack, and you've got a car that's worth 60, it's fine. It just needs 20 grand worth of work, and like nobody wants to swallow that pill. But if you're like, hey, I can just repair my pack for 5 to 10 grand ish in that window, you've got a whole different point of view on the vehicle. It's not just a brick anymore.
Yeah, and it's actually even kind of a harsher decision, right? Because by the time that folks are coming to see us, that Model S is probably worth around $30,000, right? So and literally we had a customer in the last week, and we just got his car ready for him. I mean, he had an invoice from Tesla for $28,000, and it was because he needed a new motor as well as also the pack, or at least that's what Tesla was quoting, right? And we were able to kind of turn that around for a third of the cost, right? And significant savings for these folks, and we've seen all sorts of things, right? Where and to be fair too, right? Like some of these packs are, like they're either just weren't well managed. These are also early versions of these packs, and sometimes they were mean time between failures isn't unique to every other OEM. I mean, Tesla has it too, right? So it's really interesting. You kind of turn that around, and again, the economics of it. I mean, this guy he had just bought this car for like $32,000, came off warranty, and now he's they're telling him 28, and he's like, wait, I just bought this, and I can't even imagine what the banks are thinking about this, right? Which is like, hey, I just lent you, and our standard mode is that there's X percent down. I mean, walk away from the loan. The banks are sitting on some. Anyway, that's maybe a different conversation too. But I mean,
that's
I think the banks have to be looking at this differently too, which is like, hey, that's great, you're buying a Tesla or any EV, right? By the way, there needs to be some amortized costs against something that could go wrong. And there's no nightmare stories here. This is all reasonable stuff, but it's interesting, right? Where suddenly a guy buys a car for maybe 32, 34, 36, that's kind of the going rate. And he's suddenly, upside down within 3 months. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah, that's a high liability for the bank. I never thought about that before.
Yeah, I didn't thought about that until recently. And like, we've had several customers come in where they're dealing with a situation where they're like very quickly upside down on these things. If it's out of your own pocket, that sucks. But if it's out of the bank's pocket, no one wants to be defaulting on loans, of course. But I mean, as far as the bank's concerned, that's what keeps them awake at night. Anyway, another conversation. Huh. Yeah.
What do you think the most common cause of failure for EV batteries is? Is it environmental? Is it charging habits? I mean, what do you think the biggest contributor is?
I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, so for sure, charging habits, is one of the bigger drivers. In fact, so you get some Tesla owners where they never got the level 2 charger or the 240 volt charger that they can actually go and do. So they're sitting off this kind of little 120 volt charger that plugs into a standard outlet, and that'll cover the commute on a daily basis, and it will. But at the same time, they consistently kind of get into these deficits. So then they're actually heading off to the supercharger for their weekly top up and stuff. And so the balance is you're bringing the cells constantly down, and they actually need to be up and kind of, they don't have to be in the 80 to 90% range, but that's where you can kind of rebalance them and get them all happy again. Because, not sure how familiar you are with these batteries, but there's 7,000 plus of these actual cells, and they all have to be like in perfect balance, like within not just kind of like a couple volts, like within millivolts, like 4 to 5 millivolts, and which is insanely granular.
That's tiny.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, imperceptible. Anyway, so as a result, through their charging habits, if they're not consistently kind of getting it back up, and it doesn't mean you always have to have it fully charged, but it just means if you're consistently kind of running in the 20, 30, 40% range, then you're getting into a deficit, and it's really hard to kind of manage the balance there. So that's charging habits. Then we also just kind of see folks who actually, are on a steady diet of, high calorie kind of supercharging and stuff like that. And we can see that too. And again, the data is there. We know exactly how much, what percentage of them, is supercharged versus standard AC charge and stuff like that. And you were mentioning these lineups. I think, some of that is that, and I've seen this at multiple stations, folks are kind of like they're not off on a road trip, right? They're right near home and all the chargers are filled up. And invariably it's just because they're trying to do their weekly fill up and stuff. So, and the supercharging, it is a challenge. I mean, totally doable, but folks need to kind of think of it as like supercharging is an amazing convenience, right? And the network is out there and it's absolutely awesome, but it's truly kind of a convenience, right? Like if you're living on a steady diet of supercharging, because these older cells just, they can do it. And the science is there and stuff like that. But on a regular basis, it's just harder on the older packs. The newer packs, the Model 3, the Model Y, and now the new Plaids and stuff like that, completely different batteries, battery chemistry and stuff like that. They're much, much better at dealing with the supercharging. And then the other big thing we see is that some of the early Model S's actually had a very specific issue on one of the boards. So just quick overview of the architecture. There's 16 modules in the battery pack. There's one battery management system, which is your main ECU for that. And then there's these little, secondary, as we now call them, right? Secondary boards that are on each individual module. And they're just dumb boards. They're just reporting voltage, temperature, that kind of stuff. But there's something very specific to the physical nature of the board or something like that causing, I don't know if it was a manufacturing defect or whatever, but there's a very, they call it a cell 6 or brick 6 issue where each module has 6 bricks in it. And then the brick 6 consistently fails on the voltage read. So as a result, now the BMS has no clue what the voltage is on that particular module, and so it's forced to shut it down. Now, what Tesla was able to do is actually go out and say, rather than dispose of all these batteries, what they're able to do is actually through software they can actually interpolate and just say, hey, by the way, we know what the total voltage for this module is and for the entire pack. Obviously, this voltage didn't just disappear, and they can interpolate that, but they can only do it for so long. And so what we see is when they finally have to kind of give up on that interpolation mechanism, then we actually need to go and replace the board. And that's actually, it's a $36 part, right?
Wow. Okay.
Right. And
replacing it's maybe a little more difficult, but
what's that? Sorry.
So is replacing it quite a bit more difficult?
Yeah,
cheap part, heavy labor.
I don't know if your folks have seen. These battery packs are, appropriately, they're armored, right? They are extremely hard to crack open. The newer battery packs on the Model 3 and beyond, they just got a lot smarter about how they devised it, still safely, but yeah. So getting in and actually swapping out this board is not particularly a fun undertaking. But the great thing is that, and a perfect example, 16 out of 16 modules are in perfect shape. In fact, actually, we had a customer from Woodinville ship their car down, which is, if you think about it, kind of insane. And they shipped it down. We were able to kind of swap out the board. We actually found out there was another board was about to fail, and kind of go and kind of solve that problem. Because, like I said, at that point, battery pack, the battery management system sees it as it's just failing. It doesn't have any insight in terms of what's going on. And like I said, it shuts it down. So that's exactly what, but great thing. We were able to, get the customer's car back on the road in great shape.
Yeah. Car back on the road, much more environmentally friendly than replacing a pack. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and like I said, there's a lot of money that's gone into these cars. So people want to, reasonably see some return on them.
Yeah, early adopters. We still are. If you think about it, automobiles on the road have been around for about 100 years now, in the mainstream. And then, if you think about it, EVs have been on the road in mass for about 10. about 10 years, I think, is when we've seen. I mean, they came out, 2009 was really, but 2010 is really.
So 2012 was the first model year for the Model S. And I think
so 10 years.
Yeah, and so they delivered, I think, 2012.
Yeah.
So it's really, I mean, you don't see many 2012s. So it's 2013s and stuff like that. And, we're slowly starting to see some 2014s as they kind of come off warranty as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, and let's be clear, right? It's a tidal wave that's coming, right? Like we're sitting here, and I used to say 5 years, and it's now 4, right? These Model 3s are going to start coming off warranty. Totally different architecture, much more robust. And that's not to say the Model S. I mean, when I first started looking at these battery packs, we've all seen great engineering in our careers. The engineering of Tesla is outstanding. It's bar none the best engineering I've ever seen. That said, they also sometimes get too smart for their own good. But door handles, right?
These Falcon doors,
doors and stuff like that. But I mean, it's truly some of the best. So the stuff that's going into the Model 3s and the Ys and stuff like that, and now these Plaids and stuff is just phenomenal, just phenomenal. So it's
the performance is game changer.
I mean,
are you guys going to start branching off from Tesla as you see? Because I mean, everything's going electronic now.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting. Some people say, "Oh, you're Tesla fanboy" and stuff like that, and most of the folks who are actually in this space actually aren't. And the reality is that the product that's out there is Tesla. I'm actually a Porsche guy. Great shirt, by the way. In fact, I was saying to my wife the other day, this is all just a scam. I'm just waiting for the Taycans to come off warranty, right? I mean, I've got my 911s and I've got a 66 out in the garage and stuff like that. Nice. So I'm a Porsche guy. And so I'm just waiting for those to come along. So to answer your question, we're absolutely agnostic about the electric vehicles. Couldn't care less where they come from. But at this point, those are the ones in the market, and those are the ones that we can go out and tackle. Actually, we didn't bring it down with us to Texas, which was a shame. But we had a Fiat 500e, and we love that car. Powered by laughing gas, because you get in it. It's so much fun. It's got the same, 0 to 30. It's got the same acceleration as a Tesla, like it just does. And so, great city car, you can drive anywhere and stuff like that. But we picked ours up and it was 3 years into an 8-year warranty. We picked it up for $5,600 because they're all coming off of lease in California. Wow. There's no world in which you're going to go out and replace a battery pack on a car that's at best at 56 to, now they've gone up, but even at $8,000, at that point you are just kind of swapping out packs and hopefully the pack is being refurbished for the right things. And same thing with the Leafs as well. And these are all great cars, but just that kind of secondary market just doesn't exist at least in the battery pack world. But that will absolutely change. I mean,
I was going to say that's just because it's all new right now. Right now, everything's new, expensive, and as far as cars go, rare. It's not like an engine. I think about it though. I mean, Nick and I have been talking a lot about the F-150 Lightning because I'm a huge fan. I mean, I get the utility of a truck in an actually oddly great commuter. As long as I don't have a tight parking area to go to because it's a full size truck, I get all the benefits of an electric car, all the room of a truck, and 99% of us, no matter what we say, including myself and my Raptor, are just driving to and from work and going to Costco and Home Depot pickups.
And I never made that leap the way you did. I grew up in pickup trucks, right? Love pickup trucks. In fact, when we first started coming down to Texas, first thing I went to the car, the Hertz guy was like, "Give me a pickup truck, king cab, the whole works," right? So absolutely love them, but I just can't. No judgment, but I just can't get we're not going to commute in this thing. This thing is backhand light, right? So it's just the absolute worst handling, and can't accelerate meaningfully anyway. And then on top of that, it's just it's an air trap and stuff. But make that electric, sign me up. And in fact, actually, it's interesting. So I had actually had the deposit down for the Lightning from day one, also for the Cybertruck as well, never to appear. But we were right in the midst of kicking off this new service center here in south of Austin and stuff like that, and and actually literally missed my reservation. I actually got the email from, and I knew it was coming, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things going on even down here in terms of the rollout and stuff. But I actually literally was missing the emails. They finally said, "Hey, we're giving you your $100 back." But but no, I mean, but there's plenty of opportunities, right? I mean, this isn't going away, right? This isn't going away, and that's exactly it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about it before on the show, but so I'm repeating for some of the listeners, but the F-150 is the best-selling vehicle in America, not just truck. It's the best-selling vehicle in America. If anybody can make electric mainstream, the F-150 is the way to do it.
Well, and on top of that, Ford's a smart company, right? Unlike the others, but yeah, no. In fact, it's super interesting right now. Like you actually see, like Rivian and is obviously out there, but Ford is out there. And like the Cybertruck is nowhere to be seen, right? Yeah. And it's like 2023, like maybe, right? And now part of it's like it's a total miss and missing the segment, which it is. But at the same time, Tesla's sitting there going, wait, we're making boatloads of money every day on these Model Ys and 3s, right? Like so they're actually probably somewhere, someone's doing the dollars and just like, yeah, that's great. And we're missing the segment like dramatically. But at the same time, I mean, they're just plowing through. And I think they're doing 2,000 cars a day. I don't know if that's globally or North America, but I mean, like that's a lot, right?
That's a lot of cars.
And so, they're just looking at where they, kind of go build out the opportunity. But, say what you will about the design, they've obviously, I mean, they just completely lost that, that opportunity. I mean, first mover advantage on that is like gone, right? And when you're looking at Rivian and the F-150, far more approachable, right? I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, certainly far more approachable, and just like they're eating Tesla's lunch at this point. Now, Tesla's just saying, hey, but we're like having gourmet over here, so that's probably how it's working.
Yeah, that's true. I wanted to talk to you more about I want to talk to you more about you, but before we jump into that, I do have one last very technical question.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of one of the main things I wanted to approach on this episode was that how is this affecting the power grid? As far as like, I mean, literally people are telling people to run AC at certain times of the day, and then you're like, yeah, go plug, but we want you to go EV with a 50 amp circuit, 240 volt.
No, and right.
I don't know if that balances.
Right, and I always kind of chuckle a bit too, right? Because there's all this clickbait, like Californians told, especially here in Texas, right? Californians told to not, charge their cars. Oh, we told you, right? And now, of course, we're getting the announcements like, hey, would you mind kind of backing off on, just make sure you don't charge your EV. So it's like, oh. but here's the reality, right? And I used to work in some power grids and stuff, and I'm hardly an expert, but at the same time, for utilities, one of their biggest costs is with T&D, which is transmission distribution, right? Where that cost is actually as high or higher than the actual generation of the kilowatt, right? That kilowatt hour is actually, distributing is actually some of their bigger cost, right? And some of their bigger challenges. In fact, when we think of like Seattle City Light and, utilities handing out like credits on dishwashers and light bulbs and stuff, certainly they're wanting to do the right thing for the environment and things like that. But it's actually, for them, it's fundamentally a reduction in major capital costs in terms of the transmission distribution for them. So it's a really, transmission distribution is a really big challenge, right? In fact, that's the biggest challenge. In fact, that's why this conversation has been prompted. Where I chuckle, though, is that, the grid is set up to deal with peaks, right? And, and that's fundamentally what it's about. there's no lack of capacity in terms of generation capacity behind the grid, right? Just, fire up whatever plant, hydroelectric, wind, but the point is that the actual generation of those kilowatt hours that's not the challenge, right? The challenge is meeting that peak. So, but I mean, and here in Texas right now, and I thought it was funny. You guys are like, I'm from the Northwest originally, right? Everyone's moaning about 94. I mean, it's 109, 110. I mean, we had a friend in from Arizona where it's 114, 115. So it's felt kind of cool for her here at 110. But I mean, we're getting a cool spell of like 99 this week, right? But the point is that so the grid is kind of to deal with these peaks. Car charging is a perfect opportunity to kind of offload that base, offload that peak, and just charge after 8 o'clock. In fact, that's actually the misconception around this whole kind of clickbait headline is that like, oh, you can't charge your cars, and the answer is no. They're asking you to charge it anywhere after 8, and every one of these cars has a scheduling function to say go charge it after 8 o'clock, right? And then it's no problem. In fact, if they can
plug it in, forget it, and it just does it on its own at 8 o'clock.
That, but then on top of that, like, and again, the utility's kind of struggling with peak. If they can actually understand and kind of flatten that, and kind of go out and contract for additional kilowatt hours and stuff like that. And that's not to say like, oh, like this is not a non-issue. I mean, for sure, it's a challenge, and there's a lot of utility folks who with sleepless nights and stuff around this kind of thing. But it's not the electric vehicles that are doing this, right? It's the AC. Now our house, we've got actually 13 kilowatts up on our roof, so we meet the demand curve perfectly. In fact, we've got guilt-free AC here at home, right? But that's because it's we're offset. If it's hotter, sunnier, we're getting more solar. We're doing that stuff. But no, it's just kind of dealing with the peak load. The AC is already running. People come home, light up the oven, the lights, everything else, refrigeration, all that kind of stuff, maybe do some laundry and stuff like that. And until 8 o'clock, I mean, that's where that kind of 3 to 8 is that peak demand. Now, yeah, if you're charging your car peak load, then yeah, that's a challenge. And, and there's definitely some user education around this, or user education, that's how it's so tech. Anyway,
RTFM, as we like to say.
But the point is that when you get into time of use pricing, which is perfect, right? Right. Like, they do this around California. It's just like, guess what? Charge your EV all you want. We're going to charge you 30, 40 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever it is. Right. And then very quickly you learn how to charge it, learn how that scheduling function works on your Tesla or any other EV, and you set it for 8 o'clock. So it's a super simple problem. In fact, I think of the toll lanes on the 405, right? Right. When they first opened them, people were saying like, oh, no one's using them and stuff like that. It was like, to me, it was just like, that's a pricing issue. That's not because the demand isn't there. It's a pricing issue. Bring a price, I don't know what the price was, but it was just very high. Lo and behold, they brought the price down. Everyone's using them, right? So same thing, right? And you can drive education through pricing, right? So time of use pricing is how you kind of fundamentally solve that problem. And rightly so, because, like if people want to kill the grid at some point, then they can pay accordingly and stuff like that. If they want to be, more cost effective about that, they can kind of go solve those problems. So yeah, I always have this kind of chuckle around this one, which is like, listen, the grid is already built for the peak, right? And contracting additional kilowatt hours off peak is go ahead and build that and contract that. It's not to say it's not a challenging problem, but it's not the same kind of headline kind of thing that you're kind of seeing left and right, especially right now.
Yeah. That's why I asked, because I'm like, there's always more to it than the clickbaity headlines. Yeah. One of the things I saw proposed was that they had said, so think of it like they said we need to start thinking of charging like we do think of gas stations. We don't go to the gas station, pull the pump off, and get gas directly from a pipeline.
Right.
We get gas from a storage tank.
Right.
And they said what the proposition to remedy this is that we have massive energy storage that is refilled at night, basically on off-peak hours. And then when you go to the supercharger at 3 p.m, you're pulling from reserve storage that's already on hold for you. It's like basically energy on tap. And so you're not pulling it from the grid, you're pulling it from another battery to battery. Right. I was like, and I had never, for some reason, that never occurred to me until I read the article. It was, I forget where it was. I think it was BBC or something. It wasn't like a clickbaity source.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. So they call it P2G, so point to grid, or distributed generation. And they've actually talked about this. And I picked up a Wired magazine, like this is probably 1998 or 99 or something like that. And the ability, they were first looking at like, hey, these EVs will come. Can we actually hook them up bidirectionally into the grid? And in fact, I mean, and this could be even months away. Tesla's already talked about point-to-grid capability or bidirectional flow in terms of at least kind of managing their charger units that are on the wall. They can talk intelligently and kind of pull back on demand if demand's too high or something like that. But I mean, the ability to actually have these EVs plugged into effectively your home, your own kind of personal power grid, and backup power, like, I mean, let's be clear, right? I mean, the stored energy in an EV is enough to power your house for 2 to 3 days. Like, forget everything else, just it'll power it for 2 to 3 days. And so as a result, I mean, and like I said, this could be months away, but certainly within the next probably even 2-3 years, you'll see bidirectional flow between EVs. So, you know, the utilities can get in there and kind of contract that ability to kind of like manage that. So if you have all these EVs now kind of surging into the grid during that peak and then kind of pulling out and charging back, you know, and then kind of pulling that charge back at night and all sorts of things. I mean, tons of opportunity around grid reliability. The notion that the power source is actually distributed and right out at the actual point of use is pretty spectacular. You know, folks call it microgeneration, point to grid, all these kinds of things. Yeah, no, and that's actually, I'm confident that's within easily 2-3 years, and you know, we're a software update away on these Teslas to be able to kind of do this kind of thing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, it's already sort of Ford hit it again with the Lightning. One of the coolest things that I would never use, but I think it's just amazing, is the fact that it has a 240 volt plug in the bed. Yeah, 9.6 kilowatt hours of output with a 240 volt outlet, like right in the bed. Like if you want to run a full size heavy duty table saw, just plug it into your truck. Well, I mean, I'm like, why can't I run my house off that?
I mean. So
you could technically,
yeah, no. In fact, we just moved from Mercer on. We had a 10 kilowatt Generac, right? And you know, so no, you're right. It's not going to run your dryer and your oven, but the rest of the house kind of, you know, power line goes down all the time there, and just kind of light it up, and that's exactly what happens. Yeah, no. So I mean, yeah, the Lightning is exactly the same. In fact, we're working on so we've got a mobile lab, right, where we can actually, you know, kind of run these packs, test them, go like rip up, like literally go up to the Gigafactory. You know, we do a long range test on this kind of stuff, and it's basically, you got this 2014 Model S we've got, and we've hooked it up. But I mean, we're actually going to also drive some power like off of it, so you could actually plug it in, you know, just like a generator as well, and kind of plug it back into the house as well here too. You know, and then also there becomes a mobile charging capability as well. Now, not everyone's calling us for, you know, roadside assistance on this kind of stuff, but we'll have that kind of capability in terms of kind of showing off what you can do with technology, and also kind of some thought leadership around that stuff.
Yeah, well, future's wide open. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about you being a car guy, because I know you're a Porsche guy, like you said, and you were an Avance member. And how did you get your start in cars in general? I mean, it goes beyond just your business here.
No, it's a great question, actually. I've been working, and my parents had a '67 VW Beetle, and my dad and I worked on that all the time. And then also my buddies. I think one of my circle of buddies, his older brother, had a Beetle, and we're living up in Vancouver, but he would go down to, I think it was SIR, right? And he would go down to SIR and kind of race things and stuff like that. So been working on Volkswagens and Porsches since like literally was a kid, you know, 14, 15 years old. My dad, you know, my job was to hold the light while my dad kind of worked on things, but he was great that way in terms of just, you know, showing me how all this stuff worked and stuff like that. So, and I've repaired my car since day one. It was interesting. There was kind of this dark period, right, where you could repair your car, and then everything went over to an ECU, and you had no ability to kind of dig into the car in the guts and what was going on. So there's kind of like these dark ages. I don't know, it was about 10 years or so, where you couldn't kind of work on your car. And I finally got pissed off with this, right? And I went into Carter VW to get, like some, evap valve kind of fixed and stuff. And they wanted $300 for it. And I found this kind of VAGCOM, right? The VAGCOM software for the VWs and stuff. And this is kind of early days. And I found it and it was like, wait, I can pay like, $50 for the part and actually get all these error codes and all this kind of stuff. And so then I, like totally dug into the CAN bus and started kind of playing around with that. So really cool. In fact, that's actually how this, this Tesla stuff came about, because all this data is coming off of these battery packs and it's all CAN data. And now, they actually have overloaded the actual bus where they've actually had to upgrade the network where they're spewing through megabits of data. I don't know if it's megabits, but a lot, right? Something that CAN was actually never designed to use. Anyway, but so all this data pouring off these battery packs and across the network, right down to, I think, 100 hertz kind of response times in terms of some of the data that they're spewing out and stuff like that. Anyway, so you kind of started kind of reverse engineering and hacking through it and stuff. So that's what we made.
For listeners, sorry, not a lot of our listeners are not big car people, actually, which is nice. Thank you for listening. But the CAN bus is a common term. It's a standard.
Sorry.
It's a controller. No, it's okay. Happens all the time. So CAN bus stands for CAN, Controller Area Network. It's sort of like the nervous system of your car. Connects everything together. That's the very layman's terms of it. I'm going super high level. I try and keep it at that. But think of that. A CAN bus is not just the wiring, though. It's like all the signals and everything.
Right.
It's literally, think of it like more like a nervous system and not just the nerves. So everything that goes in it as well.
Bosch for the Porsches originally. So yeah, I mean, and that's, the idea was to actually reduce the wiring, right? Rather than running, signals back and forth with all these components, you could actually just talk to them and make them do their own thing. So yeah,
little modules everywhere talking to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
So, cool
anyway,
system.
So I worked on cars since I was a kid. Kind of got a bit farther along into the CAN side of things. I'd always been a fan of electric cars. In fact, for years I had this book, Convert Your S10 to electric, right? Because at the time S10 pickups were a great way to go do it, as long as it was both your S10 and your VW Rabbit. Right. I mean, that's how far we're going back.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember that.
And for years I had this book. I was like, I'm going to convert a car. I'm going to convert a car. And that dream still lives. But now, right. I mean, obviously, the manufacturer, we're well past the tipping point on these EVs and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. In fact, I had a guy come in the shop. Oh, like, hey, I was thinking about a conversion. And it was like, I love the idea of a conversion. And if you're passionate about that particular car, that's awesome, but it makes no monetary sense, right? Like there's just no way that you'll ever be able to convert a car for some reasonable, like well beyond the cost of a used, 2013, 2014 Model S, for example. Right.
Yeah, it's cool to do. I love Resto Mod electric cars, super cool. But yeah, totally not a money saving venture by any means.
No, but if you're passionate about that particular car, like I said, we've got a 66 Shell, and you like that will be electric. We'll go to it because there's nowhere near Concours, right? So there's no problem kind of doing what we're going to do to it. But at the same time, it's interesting. Anyway, so. For years, wanted to kind of do an electric conversion, and finally, the market kind of beat me to it.
Cool. Are you guys actually? If somebody wanted to do electric, I know a lot of people are taking Tesla components because they're obviously the most prevalent on the market to do that. Do you have a resale market at all? Do people approach you with that ask relatively often, or is it
one of the things we do have is
I've never looked into it.
Because we're dealing with a lot of these packs, some of these modules that are in perfectly good condition, but not right or balanced for that individual pack. We have kind of an aftermarket sales for certainly some of the modules. We're not in the dismantling business, so we're not pulling motors out. In fact, we actually work with, folks will provide us with a remanufactured motor. Our focus is on the batteries, right? We have some folks come and say, hey, can you replace the motor? And we've got a couple in stock that we kind of say, hey, and by the way, we're going to work on your battery. We'll work on your motor too. But we're not out there today at least doing a motor. So I think there's a great opportunity there, but yeah. So some people do, but primarily, I mean, focus on us for the battery work.
Cool. I was going to ask you one more thing. As you've looked at different battery technologies, Tesla, Porsche, the Rivians that are coming on the scene, is there anybody who you think has got a clear edge? I mean, Tesla's been in it the longest. They've got great technology, but is there anybody who's got something out there that you're like, this is something to watch?
Yeah, there's a small company called Tesla that has no. I mean, no. Like seriously, when you look at it, and in fact, when you look at the latest cell technologies that they're developing and stuff like that. So if you'd asked me 2-3 years ago, it would be like, oh. Tesla has a 10-year, lead on the rest of the competitors, but they'll eventually catch up. But I'm seeing some of the latest pack technology, and it's being developed right up here in Austin. It's crazy what they're doing, and so I actually think that they're actually continuing to just even pull away, right? When you look at the packs that they've just developed for the Plaid class Model S's, and then what's going into the 3s and the Ys, we'll eventually see it in the Cybertruck and the lower level version that they're working on. It's like incredibly insane. Like their engineering is truly that good, and they're also they're vertically integrated, which is true. And so are the rest of the OEMs. But they've just been like, their engineering is like phenomenal. So I actually don't see that. And I've actually worked with, formerly worked at Continental AG, like, the tire folks, but also all the telematics and stuff. And OEMs are just slow and terrible. And they're like awful at software, just awful at software. In fact, right, VW CEO stepped down and they just like threw him overboard because it wasn't because he wasn't developing great cars. It was because they were just so far behind on the software side.
Anybody who's ever used an OEM infotainment unit in anything can vouch for how terrible software is in cars.
And we used to work like hand in hand with the folks at Audi who like really good sense of form factors and all that kind of stuff, but just disastrous. And I guess we're software guys, so we kind of look at these things differently. It's like looking at BlackBerry, and when you got handed Pearl for the first time, and you're just like, this is, and they hand you the user manual that was this thick. Meanwhile, someone handed you this iPhone that didn't have one. It was just, it was just like these guys are like. And it literally did take 2 or 3 years. Like the biggest, mobile phone manufacturer platform capability just disappeared off the face of the earth, right? And that, so just terrible at software. Anyway, so and we know that, right? Like we've got a 2018 Model 3 of our own, and it's never looked better, right? My wife has we've got an ML350, beautiful car, great. Fabulous engineering, drives great, love it, and stuff like that. But we're staring at this kind of same 2013 kind of, rear backup camera that's like this, right? And so, that locked in hardware, firmware stuff is just, and the map hasn't been updated in just as long, right? Meanwhile, our Model 3, we're getting performance upgrades. First year, they added all sorts of additional performance and stuff. It slows down, obviously. With some time, but these Model S's that we're getting into the shop, are still getting software updates, right? In fact, to the point where it's a challenge for us, right? Because Tesla kind of tucked some other stuff in there around the battery management system, and then we're like pulling our hair out how to figuring out how we kind of go deal with the latest patch and stuff. But they're doing that, right? So sorry, back to your original question. I just don't. Like there's the battery technology, the battery management, and obviously these companies have smart people. There's no question, but I actually think, like I said, I think actually Tesla's pulling it even further ahead on this kind of stuff. And the other OEMs will develop very good, capable, obviously EVs, and Musk has said this himself. I mean, huge amount of respect for the German car manufacturers and the build quality and all that kind of stuff. He's straight up loves it. But I don't think they'll ever match the range, at least at this point, right? And that's what it's coming down to, right? The performance is there. It's just, current and volts and kind of, the Taycan is a 800 volt, no surprise. I mean, it should perform. Yeah. And then on top of that, they know how to build a performance suspension and everything else that goes into a car that Tesla doesn't, right? But, but so they'll develop very capable electric vehicles, but I think it's going to be years before they actually truly kind of meet that bar. Lucid might be the one interesting one, but founders he was the chief engineer for the Model S and stuff, so he kind of figured it out, right?
Makes sense.
And by the way, I would encourage folks to listen to your podcast to go check out just some of the informational videos that Lucid's put out, and it's actually the founder, and he walks through it, and of course I'm the battery guy, so I'm like all over it. But he walks through it and like fundamentals of like power versus energy, energy density, power density, all those kinds of things, and how you kind of make all that fit and stuff like that. And in fact, it's actually I always kind of laugh when someone says they're going to take a Tesla motor and put it into like a BMW 202 or just something like, and it's just like, no, that's never going to happen. And it's just like, people need to understand that the reason the Model S is so big and has such a huge wheelbase is because it needs that. In order to develop that kind of power, it needs a really big pack, right? And it's not just energy capacity, but it's power density, right? So people are kind of like, oh, I'm going to put a 350, horsepower such and such into this car. And it's like, sure, you are, but you're never going to get the battery pack in there. I mean, it's kind of like the Saturn rocket type of thing. Right? Where it's like, you only get, into that chassis, you're never going to get that power density in there. So I always kind of have a chuckle when folks talk about what they're going to go do with this Tesla drive. And it's like, dude, that's way too much power, like perfect amount of power. I applaud you, but you will never get a battery pack that will fit into that chassis to deliver the power that you hope you'll get. So it's always interesting. And again, I'm the battery guy, right? So I can go, no.
It's a fun idea, but maybe 20 years from now when we have some new battery technology that shrinks it way down.
Right,
but for now,
and literally it comes down to power density, right? And the energy is there. You can deal with it. Is the power density and the ability to deliver that. So anyway.
Yeah, the Lucid stuff's beautiful. That's I'm glad you brought that up. I was wondering if they were one to watch, because everybody I've talked to who's worked on Lucids or has done some work with the project, and there are actually quite a few of us members who have and haven't talked about it too much.
Right.
And they've just been like, it's amazing. It's an amazing car. Fit and finish is top notch. Beautiful inside and out.
No. I mean, and to be clear, right? And the only reason I wouldn't have kind of gone with Lucid off the top is that building cars is a really hard problem, right? I mean, Tesla was, days, weeks, hours away from bankruptcy, right? Like it's kind of like that Apollo 13 where you've got to completely thread that needle to bring it on home, right? And they just barely did, right? In my view, people are saying, oh, Tesla, don't buy a Tesla, they're going to be gone. It's like, no, they're not going to be gone. You might have a question of who owns them, but I mean, they were never going to disappear. They're just not going to, and they won't. They won't ever disappear. But I mean, I could see Tesla filing for bankruptcy, because you can get upside down on your cash flow so quickly. So my point here is with Lucid is that no surprise, right? The pedigree is there, the engineering is there, the thoughtfulness. What would I do differently in terms of what the Model S is, and in fact, that's probably kind of straightforward, which is like, I don't have a lawn in my face, so now I can go build the things that are necessary. Right? I mean, the man's a walking entropy generator, right? but at the same time, no, but it's a challenge, right? Like. Ford and GM have been at this for 100+ years. Supply chain, all those things are really, really, really hard problems. And so the only thing I would say about Lucid would be the same thing I'd say about Tesla, 10 years ago. It was just like, it's going to be very tough for them, right? And it's not through lack of technology, or it's not about the car or anything like that. It's a really hard problem. right? And Tesla barely made it through that. So Lucid maybe can.
I remember that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean,
I was worried they were going to be another Tucker, honestly, because I was like, man, if they're too good too early, the big OEMs are going to try and kill them off. And I think they're one of the lucky breaks Elon had, and not that he has.
I think he had multiple.
Not that he's had luck. He had multiple lucky breaks, but I'm not saying it's all luck. But I'm just saying is that I don't think they actually expected it to be as successful as it was. So they didn't give it the attention they gave to like Tucker back in the 50s. They were like, this is doomed.
No.
Let's just watch it fail. And then it was like, boom.
They dropped the ball and stared at it. Right. Just like, it's one thing to drop it, but then just stare at it and watch, like, who's going to pick this one up? I mean, and pretty classic. But even aside from any other competition, it's just a hard, like, just supply chain, all this kind of stuff, and integration and, just everything. And it's an intensely capital intensive problem. Right. And so, so that's my only caution around Lucid. It's not actually it's not a commentary on the technology. In fact, what I've seen so far just looks really smart and sharp. And, as the guy who actually works on these batteries, just kind of like, because these packs can be incredibly frustrating at times. And more often than not, the firmware is harder to deal with than the actual physical battery and stuff. So, I'm eating this up as I'm watching these videos. Oh, great. You're doing this. Fabulous. Thank you. It's such a hard problem. And like I said, no judgment on the technology. It's just hard. And that's true of Rivian too. Right now, they seem to be super well capitalized. And I don't know how they got all the money from Amazon and stuff like that. But that's the kind of the biggest challenge. But then that just comes down to who owns them, not whether they succeed.
Yeah, we're a little over on time, but I have one.
Yeah.
I have one last question I thought of that I'm dying to know that I know you'd have some insight on. How do you think a right to repair is going to come into all these EV makers?
Yeah.
So we talked about the firmware, and we're almost dealing with we're oddly dealing with car companies becoming software companies.
Yeah. No.
Like really?
It's interesting. In fact, I was on the Tesla forum actually making this, alluding to this comment. I mean, Tesla has a real, fundamental disconnect on private property, right? Like they have this idea that they still kind of own the car even 8 years later, and their ability to kind of go in and do things that they really shouldn't be. And I'm sure the FTC, like if someone started really kind of complaining about it, just super questionable stuff. But not because I don't think it's necessarily malevolence. It's just like too close to it, right? It's just like, Microsoft back in the 90s, right? They were just too close to what they were working on and where the ownership was. But so right to repair, Tesla's terrible at it, right? It's just awful. Right. They're just like, and they're kind of pushing and they're being pushed, by the feds and stuff to kind of open this stuff up and things like that. But, not to be fair to them, but at the same time, they've actually only been at this 10 years, right? GM and Ford have been in it 100 plus years, and the concept of right to repair, kind of crazy. And I'll tell you a story, and it's really interesting. I think it's illustrative of this issue. So you need to get some bolts for some control arms, right? And we've got a parts supplier up in Austin that we deal with, the Tesla parts counter and stuff. But I went to the one in San Antonio because we're kind of halfway in between, and literally 4 control arm bolts. And, do you have the VIN? Yep, great. And they tie everything to the VIN and stuff like that, which is, why do you need the VIN? Okay, great. You want to know the exact model, fine, and aligning the parts. That's always helpful. Oh, do you own the car? Well, it turns out I did. But that shouldn't matter, right? In terms of hey, you don't own the car. You have no businesses. And then the dude asked me for my ID. And he wanted to verify that not only I was the owner, I was the owner who said he was the owner. And I mean, imagine going into a Ford parts department and being asked for ID. Imagine doing that in Texas, right? someone asks you for your ID, they're going to pull out something different, right?
It's a car, not a gun.
No, absolutely. So, and I mean, it's just, and so it's just a fundamental disconnect in terms of kind of right to repair and all this kind of stuff. And so, they've started opening this up with, they've got Toolbox, which is their tool, and their main software capabilities, so you can kind of go in and grab all this. But it's really been almost kind of, Massachusetts has right to repair, and others now, of course, but was one of the first in terms of right to repair laws and stuff like that. And so that will happen, and competition will be good for Tesla because they'll start opening up APIs and all this, and every other capability. But it's interesting, right? And I mean, incredibly opaque as an organization in terms of what's going on and stuff like that. They have a restricted parts list that you cannot purchase, replacement parts on, right? They're just not handing to you. So it's always interesting how you kind of go about and pick those up. But they'll get there. And I mean, they have to. And, in terms of, as you kind of think about it, like, healthy ecosystem for the vehicles and, all the things we kind of think about in software world, developers, right? And all that kind of stuff. So they'll do that. But right now, and in their defense, right? Tesla, catches fire as national news. Meanwhile, 100 Camrys, caught fire yesterday alone. Right. So, so PR, I mean, oftentimes, right? Like, so case in point, a salvage title car can't use the supercharger network, right? So if it's ever been written off, like because of a fender bender and the insurance company decided that they were writing off for whatever reason, perfectly good chassis, untouched battery, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, there's cowboys out there who are kind of like putting these things together with, duct tape and stuff like that. And good reason. They don't want these guys kind of showing up and like parking, and then taking out the whole row of Model 3
right,
and stuff. But at the same time, I mean, they're just dealing in a different PR world. And so they've battened just everything is so battened down, and unnecessarily so, right? Like, and that's opening up. The latest versions of what they call it Toolbox, now is starting to open that up. And, so we license that software, and it's actually reasonably priced. It's obviously not cheap. But at the same time,
but no OEM software is, if you're in the market. I mean,
and that's
they're all expensive.
Right?
So.
I mean, right to repair doesn't mean like, hey, you get to have things for free. It just means that you can go out and you can
go purchase them and figure it out.
And there should be some kind of recouping of that cost and different things, but and also just making sure that you've got reasonably certified people working on these things, and and that's and to be very clear for listeners and otherwise, we do everything absolutely by the book. Right, it's all to spec. We've got service manuals. We've got everything about the car and what needs to be done, and everything. Like, there's no cowboys here, right? Like, there's some folks who are doing that. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for folks who want to play by the rules of the road, it's still even hard, right? Like there's this whole process for certification that we've gone through, and again, appropriately, but super hard to do. And for the individual who wants to go out and work on these, that's years away. Now, also to be fair too, it's, and I'm not building, what we do, up too much, but this is hard, thorny, kind of getting your gas mixture right on a carburetor is way different from, balancing, every other imaginable thing in what is an otherwise very dangerous and unstable, battery if not handled properly, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot can go wrong with a lithium
also
battery.
Even just if you're repairing
things,
own, right? Like, you do the wrong thing and touch the wrong thing, it's not just like, oh, hey, I got myself burnt on the exhaust
game over.
It's done, right? And that's actually why they don't want you on the supercharger networks, and they won't repair your car either, until they've kind of run it through a whole gamut of tests. And that's because, they don't want their service folks going in there kind of, because like I said, some cowboy's done something crazy to a pack, and they kind of dig in and do something wrong. So yeah. Did I answer your question? I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it made me think about it. Just the more cars change. Our younger listeners, you guys are getting into cars. I mean, we do have well, I wouldn't say a huge younger audience, but we do have like late teens, early 20s that listen. You guys will understand when you're older. And I know your parents have said that about a lot of things, but in this case, you were at a really exciting and different time in automotive history that we didn't grow up with anything close to this. I mean, OBD 1 and 2 was a big step for us.
Right,
Going
exactly.
to EV is a huge step. That's like landing on the moon for the automotive industry. So really cool stuff. Really cool to see, Chad, you're a pioneer in the repair space because, one of the first after, it's usually just the dealer. And that's when you think of electric cars, that's all people think of. It's like, where am I going to get my Tesla serviced? Well, Tesla, where else would you do it? Well, that's not going to be the option for very long, just like you can get your Honda serviced at a million shops. Right. Your electric cars are going to be the same way in probably 20, 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting stuff. Cool.
All right.
Well, Chad, thank you very much. That was a great conversation.
Thanks
I
for
hope our listeners enjoyed it and learned a lot. I sure did.
Yeah, cheers. And if folks have questions, I don't know if you guys share contact info, but happy to
absolutely
fire that away and stuff like that. I mean,
ReCell-EV.com is your website, right?
And you can also kind of email us at info@ReCell-EV.com and stuff like that. We're always
posting the Avance group.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks a ton.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chad.
All right, cheers.
And for the Avance podcast, I'm Dan, and Nick is obviously out sick. So don't just get there. Enjoy the drive.
Yeah, exactly.